Welcome everyone to today's explainer. Look, if you're anywhere in the manufacturing, importing, or distribution space for industrial equipment in Europe, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're decoding what is literally the biggest overhaul to European industrial safety law in 20 years. We're talking about the EU Machinery Regulation 2023/1230. We are finally moving away from a framework built back in the pre-digital era to one that tackles the realities of today, stuff like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and advanced robotics. So let's jump right in and unpack exactly what you need to know.
Right off the bat, the most fundamental change is actually right there in the title. Notice how we're shifting from a directive to a regulation. Now, under the old 2006 directive, individual member states had to take the rules and transpose them into their own national laws. And as you might guess, that led to minor but really frustrating interpretive differences across borders, something we call gold plating. Well, by becoming a regulation, this new legal framework is directly applicable and legally binding in its entirety across all EU member states. It completely levels the playing field. So a manufacturer in Germany, an importer in Italy, and an end user in Poland, they're all going to operate under the exact same technical and legal definitions.
And hey, just in case you were wondering if the EU is actually taking this seriously, let's talk financial stakes for a second. Under Article 50, member states get to define their exact penalties, but they're heavily expected to align with recent directives like NIS2. What does that mean for you? It means non-compliance could hit you with fines up to 10 million euros or 2% of your global annual revenue. Yeah, no joke. This isn't just about, updating a couple of safety manuals. This is a massive regulatory compliance event that really demands the attention of the entire C-suite.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the context and that all-important deadline. Then we'll cover the expanding scope, dig into the new cyber and AI rules, break down who's actually liable among economic operators, map out the new conformity paths, and finish up with how you can prep for the switchover. Starting off with Section 1, Context and the 2027 deadline. Let's talk about the hard switchover. We absolutely need to nail down the timeline of these requirements, so you can map out your internal strategy. So, the regulation was published in June 2023. As of January 2024, notified bodies started getting appointed. Fast forward to October 2026, and member states must have those massive national penalties we just talked about officially defined. But listen closely, because the most critical date here is January 2027. That is the date of full application. And here is what you absolutely must take away from this. There is zero transition overlap. It's a hard switch. Machinery placed on the market before January 2027, fine, it complies with the old directive. But starting on that exact date, older declarations of conformity literally will not be valid anymore, period. Your machinery must comply with the new regulation and carry the new EU Declaration of Conformity. Moving on to Section 2, Expanding the Machinery Scope. Welcome to the digital era. The old directive was really built for physical cogs and gears, but this new regulation expands the scope significantly to reflect today's highly connected factory floor. We're now officially covering autonomous mobile machinery, AI-based safety systems, collaborative robots, or Cobots, and smart connected equipment. But honestly, the biggest paradigm shift here is that fourth point, software performing safety functions. This is huge. Under this new regulation, standalone software that executes a safety function is now legally classified as a safety component in its own right. That means it requires its own conformity assessment and CE marking, even if it's sold completely separate from any physical hardware. All right, Section 3, Cybersecurity and AI rules. Let's look at protection against corruption. With software now being so heavily regulated, we really have to look at what I think is the most profound conceptual shift in the entire regulation, and that is combining mechanical safety with digital security. Think about it. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's actually now a mandatory essential health and safety requirement, an EHSR, for machinery. This means you absolutely must protect your safety-related control systems against corruption. And that doesn't just mean deliberate cyber attacks or hacking. It also means protecting against accidental, unintentional failures by staff. Bottom line, if a network connection or some sort of remote access feature can compromise the physical safety of an operator, your machine is simply not legally compliant anymore. And when we throw artificial intelligence into the mix, well, the rules get even stricter. If you're using self-learning or self-evolving AI models to manage safety functions, the regulation strictly demands that their behavior remains predictable and traceable at all times. You have to guarantee a continuous level of protection. In fact,
It's so strict that manufacturers are now legally required to maintain safety software tracing logs for 5 whole years after any upload or modification. That brings us to Section 4, Roles of Economic Operators. Or more importantly, who is actually liable? So who exactly is on the hook for all of this? Well, accountability now extends rigorously across the entire supply chain. Let's actually test this with a pretty common real-world scenario on the factory floor. Imagine a plant manager decides to add a brand new wireless remote control to an existing older overhead crane. Just a quick upgrade, right? Well, does this trigger new legal liabilities? The answer is a resounding yes. And the crucial concept to understand here is substantial modification. Because the plant manager introduced a new wireless link, which, as we know, carries digital and cybersecurity risks, they have substantially modified that machinery. By doing so, boom, that plant manager legally becomes the manufacturer under the new regulation. They now have to perform a brand new risk assessment, update the technical file, and issue a brand new CE marking for that crane. And the liability certainly doesn't stop with just the manufacturer. Responsibilities are shared rigorously all the way down the chain. Importers, you've got to verify that the original manufacturer has actually completed the conformity process. And distributors have incredibly strict obligations now under Article 14.2. For instance, if a distributor finds a batch of CE-marked machines sitting in their warehouse, but the user instructions are missing, they cannot legally sell them. Selling unmanualed stock is a direct violation of their new obligations. Okay, Section 5, Conformity and Compliance Paths. Earning that CE mark. So how do you actually go about proving compliance so you can legally sell your machinery in the EU? Let's see how this builds on the old Annex 4 rules. High-risk machinery is now listed under Annex I, and it's split into 2 categories, Part A and Part B. Now, if your product falls under Part A, this includes things like vehicle lifts or systems using self-evolving AI, you completely lose the option for self-certification. No way around it, you absolutely must use a third-party notified body. If your product falls under Part B, think certain woodworking saws or presses, you can self-certify, but only if you apply harmonized standards that cover every single essential health and safety requirement flawlessly. If you deviate from those standards even a little bit, you're forced to use a notified body. And finally, Section 6, Preparing for the Switchover, your action items for 2027. We are deep into this 42-month transition window right now, and the clock is definitely ticking. So here are your immediate action items to get ahead of this. First, audit your current product scope right away, especially if you're producing software, AI systems, or cobots. Second, integrate cybersecurity directly into your design risk assessments. It simply can't be an afterthought anymore. And third, transition to digital documentation. Honestly, this last one is a massive win for manufacturers. The new regulation finally allows digital operating instructions. But just keep in mind, if a customer or a non-professional user specifically requests a paper copy, you still have to provide it to them free of charge within 1 month. I want to leave you with this final thought today. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT problem. It is quite literally a mechanical safety requirement. A compromised network can now directly cause physical harm on the factory floor, and EU law has officially updated to reflect that reality. That hard switchover on January 2027, it's going to be here before you know it. So ask yourself, are your product roadmaps, your risk assessments, and your supply chains genuinely ready for the switch? Now is the time to start asking these tough questions. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.